Will you join me in prayer? Let the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Lately, I've been thinking a lot about Alex and Lola Miller, two delightful people that Patrice and I met during my first field placement as a student pastor when I was in seminary at Andover Newton in Boston. Alex and Lola were members of the Union Church in Waban, Massachusetts. They were both in their 70s when Patrice and I met them, and they instantly became two of our favorite people in that congregation. They were both very gracious. They went out of their way to make us feel welcomed and appreciated, even though they knew we were only going to be there for the short time while I was in school. They were interested in getting to know us, and they were willing to share some of their own life experiences with us. Alex had spent his entire career working for the YMCA, and over the years had worked himself up to a position of national leadership. I loved listening to him talk about the ideals and the mission of the organization that he had dedicated his life to serving. Lola was a kind-hearted woman who possessed a hope-filled wisdom that grew out of her desire to find the good in every person that she encountered. We didn't have any family near us while we were living in Boston, and so we were delighted when Lola and Alex invited us to join them and their granddaughter and her fiancé for Easter dinner during our first year in Boston. After the Easter morning worship service, we got in our car and drove over to their house in the center of the village of Waban. Their home was a stately, old, two-story, whitewashed, clapboard frame house that oozed understated elegance. It was beautifully maintained. It was tastefully furnished. The dining room table was intricately arrayed with polished silver and bone china place settings. The whole house was filled with the wonderful aromas of Easter dinner. Lola's calm and unhurried hospitality put all of us at ease, and she and Alex were clearly enjoying hosting all of us. Patrice and I were about the same age as her granddaughter, who was a graduate student at Harvard, and her fiancé, who was a very serious-looking, mature young man who had just graduated from graduate school. After drinks were served and we'd had a few minutes to relax and get acquainted, Lola stood up and announced with great fanfare that she and Alex had hidden Easter eggs in the living room. And before we sat down to dinner, we would have an egg hunt. I remember that being a very surreal moment. 4 young adults in our mid-20s, all in graduate school or already pursuing our careers, were being invited to search for hard-boiled eggs hidden in the cushions of the furniture and behind table lamps. At first, I thought she was joking. And then, after a period of stunned silence, I noticed the pained look of embarrassment on her granddaughter's face. There was no saying no to Lola, especially since she was so obviously excited about reprising this cherished family tradition. And so we all took our straw-lined baskets, and the hunt was on. Each of us feigned mock surprise whenever we found a colored egg in the drawer of a coffee table, or behind a framed photograph, or tucked between the volumes in the bookcase, until all of the eggs were accounted for. I wish that I could tell you that it turned into a delightfully playful moment that all of us thoroughly enjoyed, but it didn't. It was just really awkward. I suspect that when their beloved grandchildren were young, Easter egg hunts were a source of great joy for Alex and Lola. It's easy for me to imagine the delight that they took seeing the excitement in their children's faces and hearing their squeals of joy as they raced around their stately living room searching for hidden eggs. But it was absurd to expect that same delightful experience could be recovered by inviting 4 young adults to reenact that same childhood ritual. I've been thinking about that awkward moment at Alex and Lola's home this past week as I've reflected on the story of the Transfiguration in Matthew's Gospel. There's a part of us that always wants to hold on to the precious moments in our lives and preserve them forever. Three of Jesus' disciples had shared one of those precious moments with Jesus at a critical turning point in his ministry, just after Jesus had predicted his own passion and resurrection. He took Peter and James and John and went up with them onto a high mountain, apart from everyone else. And they shared this mystical experience that forever changed their perception of Jesus. While they were talking, Jesus was suddenly transfigured into a glorified state. His face became shiny, like the sun. His clothes became dazzling white. Suddenly there appeared Moses and Elijah talking with him. In that incredible moment, Peter and James and John suddenly saw the connection between their mountaintop experience and the mountaintop experiences that had shaped their spiritual ancestors. Moses had gone up to the top of Mount Horeb and had a glimpse of the glory of God when he received those 10 commandments. Elijah, the prophet, had gone up to that very same mountain and glimpsed the glory of God, not in the fire, not in the wind, not in the earthquake, but in that still small voice. Now, Peter and James and John were having their own mountaintop revelatory experience. Jesus' appearance no longer resembled that of a peasant son of a Galilean carpenter, but rather the glorified Son of God. In that moment, they had glimpsed Jesus' true identity. They had been privileged with knowledge revealed directly to them by God. It was such a moving and inspiring experience that Peter wanted to preserve that moment as long as he could. Let's build 3 dwellings, one for Moses, one for Elijah, and one for you, Jesus. Let's make this last as long as we can. Let's hold on to this experience and never let it go. Maybe we can even make these dwellings permanent so that we can return here year after year and revisit this special moment. Maybe we can build a church here, or maybe several different churches, each by a separate religious tradition where daily masses can be celebrated and the faithful can gather every year for the Feast of the Transfiguration on the 6th of August. Maybe we can build a Franciscan monastery here where monks can devote their lives to prayer and service. Maybe we can mark a trail so that pilgrims throughout the ages can climb up the mountain themselves in an act of devotion and reverence. Maybe we can build a road with switchbacks going right up the face of the mountain so that tourists will be willing to pay good money to pay a taxi cab to get them up to the very site where Jesus was seen in his glorified state. Eventually, all of those things were built on Mount Tabor, the high-domed hill in Galilee that has been associated with the transfiguration of Jesus ever since the 3rd century. But Jesus wasn't interested in any of those things. He refused to allow the disciples to tarry on top of that mountain. Instead of building 3 dwellings, Jesus insisted that they immediately go down the mountain and resume their journey towards Jerusalem, where the greatest challenges of their lives awaited them. That mountaintop experience had given Peter and James and John a deeper understanding of who Jesus really was, but that moment of revelation was not an end in and of itself. It was not something to be captured and institutionalized and reenacted year after year. It wasn't meant to be the first annual Feast of the Transfiguration. It was a profound and significant moment to be experienced and cherished and remembered so that it could help bolster their faith in the face of the challenges ahead of them. Here at First Congregational Church of Battle Creek, we've entered into a 3-month season of spiritual discernment. We're not searching for the definitive Word of God that will be true for all people for all time. We're prayerfully seeking to discern the will of God for this congregation in this day. In order to be open to the revelation of God in this moment. We have to be willing to release our hold on some very cherished traditions that we've held for a long, long time. Whenever we have a meaningful experience in the church, a program that brings delight to our children, a worship service that touches us deeply, an adult faith formation offering that opens our minds to new understandings, an outreach ministry that makes life better for others. We want to hold on to those experiences as long as we can. We institutionalize them. We appoint committees to be responsible for them. We try to reenact them year after year. Anything that goes well at church becomes the first annual 11 o'clock Christmas Eve service of lessons and carols. The first annual Guatemala mission trip. The first annual Garden of Dreams Halloween party. The first annual crop walk. The first annual Freedom School. The first annual rummage sale. It's not that any of those traditions are bad or wrong or inappropriate to continue. But spiritual discernment is the practice of opening ourselves to the revelation of God for God's intended future for the church. Not for all time, not forever and ever, not for everyone, but for us, for now, for this time and place. We won't be able to hold on to it forever. This will not become our first annual fall revision program. We won't be building 3 dwelling places. We won't be lingering long. But we will try to be attentive to each other and to God in this moment. We'll try to glimpse the glory of God that can inspire us and challenge us and keep us motivated to keep moving forward together in faith as we live into the challenges of this new day. Alex and Lola Miller were 2 wonderful, faithful people who shared lots of precious moments with their grandchildren. They had hoped that by reenacting the Easter egg hunt that had been such a source of delight for their family in the past, they could recover that same joyful experience again. But it didn't work. And it wasn't necessary. The love that Alex and Lola had shared with their granddaughter all throughout her life had already transformed her. It helped her grow up into this confident, self-assured, compassionate young woman. Instead of reliving the past, it was time for them to explore new ways of cherishing the precious moments they had to share with each other in the present moment. We all try to hold on to those precious moments we experience in life for as long as we possibly can. We take photographs and upload them onto our Facebook pages or paste them into albums. We hold on to souvenirs and keepsakes to remind us of the experiences we've shared. Sometimes we even go back and try to relive the same cherished experience over and over again. But remembering is different than reliving. Remembering helps us carry those precious moments with us as we move forward into the new day. As much as we want to join Peter and build 3 dwelling places, hold on to the moments we cherish as long as we possibly can, Jesus does not let us tarry. Instead, he sends us back down the mountain with those same familiar words. Get up. Do not be afraid. Amen.